Hey guys, BJ the Brave here, back with some more Warpforge content, and today I'm bringing you my top 10 3 drops in the game of Warpforge. Little series that I'm going to do. I'm going to go through all of the different energy drops in different videos, but I wanted to start with the 3 drops. Now, a couple of things just to say that obviously this is my list, so let me know in the comments what your top 10 are, any that you agree with or disagree with. Let's get the conversation going in chat. But yeah, this is kind of like my personal favorite. So I'm just going to kind of go through them from 10 down to 1, 1 being my favorite, obviously, and just kind of give you a few kind of a bit of an overview as to why it's in my top 10. Okay, so let's fire in. As always, if you enjoy this content, please like the video, subscribe. Let's jump in to number 10. So number 10 for me. And I've definitely got some honourable mentions. This wasn't actually easy to do in the 3 drops because there's quite a lot of good 3 drops in the game. But I think number 10 for me, and a good starting point, is the Triarch Praetorian, because this card just like oozes value. It's just like a really good benchmark for the rest of the conversation about what we class as a good 3 drop. So why is this in my top 10 for 3 drops? Well, I think if you're collecting the necrons, you're really happy to see this. First of all, it is a core card, so you're going to get this card right from the start, and you are getting a card that will last you and be in your very top meta decks that you can build with this faction. And part of the reason for that is that for 3 energy, it has really good stats. So we've got the 4 health, obviously being higher than the energy cost. That's always a really good sign. It's also coming in at a really respectable 3/3, and this is always a sign of a quite a powerful card as well, because it's hard for your enemy to play around it. They can't what I call cheat or trick the trade, right? Like if you had a high melee attack and a low range attack, then obviously your opponent can just try and kill the card based on the range damage. So to me, that's what I call tricking the trade or cheating the trade. So the good thing with the even stats with the 3/3 is that you can't trick the trade against the Praetorian. You have to take the 3 damage back. So it's basically got really good all-round stats. But on top of that, it's also got 2 very powerful abilities. One is Vanguard, obviously protecting your other units from being damaged, including your Warlord. But what really then just sets the Praetorian above the rest of kind of like other similar Vanguards, for example like the Veteran in Chaos, is the fact that it's got Remnant too. So it's the fact that so early on in the game this is very difficult to get rid of, and even if you can get rid of it, you've got to attack again to kill the Remnant. And if you don't, the fact that the Necrons have so many ways to then bring this back to life just makes it incredibly powerful. With the recent buff to Nemesis, this card gets even better, of course, as do all Remnants, because it's an option that you can kind of keep alive for longer with a Nemesis ability as well. So it's a really powerful 3 drop. Now in 9th place for me, I'm actually going to go with a Space Marine option, and it's actually the Primaris Inceptor. Now you look at these stats. The first thing you've got to acknowledge, and what makes this a really great card, is the fact that it's a flying unit. When you've got a flying unit, it's very hard for your opponent to trade against your melee damage unless they've also got a flying unit. But that's a minor weakness in this game, and what it means is that most often than not your opponent has to attack the range attack. So gain for 3 energy, similar to the Praetorian, we've got the 3 range and the 4 health. But again, having 4 health when you're a ground-based unit versus a flying unit makes a real difference. There are a lot of units in the game that don't have good range damage. A lot of factions, like for example Tyranids and Chaos, that can quite struggle sometimes to have an answer to a card like this. And then the icing on the cake really is the fact that it's obviously got flank. So sometimes I like to compare this unit to so many other 3 drops. I just think they can barely match this on the stats, never mind the fact that then this has flying and flank. It's just really powerful. It can pretty much remove anything in the game, in the early game as well, and it's just a really all-round solid 3 drop for the ultramarines. Alright, so in 8th place I'm actually going to go with a Tau card, and I'm going to talk about the dynamic offensive. Now, the problem when you think about stratagems like this, the kind of downside, if you like, is that it does mean you are sacrificing a little bit of tempo. So we're essentially taking the turn off, or we're taking, you know, there's 3 energy we have less to play. But the ability of the dynamic offensive is a very powerful one. Most of the factions have a 3 energy draw card sort of option, but the Tau one is by far the most dangerous in terms of the power ceiling, because it says that if there are battle suits, then you give them flank. Now, anyone who's watched my Shadow Sun or my Onvar battlesuit guide knows that you can obviously devise the deck around battlesuits for this card, and it's really worth doing, because the value that you're getting when you're bringing on things like the shielded what's the 4-drop called now? The 4-drop. Yeah, this guy here, the Crisis Battle Bodyguard. You know, this guy coming on with flank when it's got shield and 4 range is really powerful. Of course, we've got the broadside, even a simple Crisis Battlesuit. But when you've got things like the broadside coming on, which obviously has massive 5 with long range, so that your opponent's not attacking it back. And my favourite one of all, obviously, being the Riptide, which is a huge 8 range damage with long range and the shield anyway. I mean, the value of that having flank is uncalculable, really. It's phenomenal, and it really does turn the dynamic offensive into an absolute powerhouse. So for me, that is definitely in my top 10. In 7th place, I'm actually going to go with, and I found it difficult just putting these in order, but I'm actually going to go with the Gallerans Champion. The Gallerans Champion is like an absolute value package packed into 3. This might be possibly the best value 3-drop in the game. The downside, obviously, and the reason why it's not higher in the list, is that you know, your opponent is going to do everything to ensure you don't get that value. So it's not all within your control. Now, the reason why it is in the list is that its stats alone are very, very credible, right? It's the same as the Praetorian. Obviously, it doesn't have Vanguard, but for 3 energy, we've got the 4 health, the 3/3 again, so that it can't have the trick the trade. And if you just drop this on 3, it's a really solid tempo play. The other thing is, at the end of the turn, you create a Zealot Legionary, so you're getting some immediate value in that you're getting essentially drawing a card, which, by the way, is 4 energy, so it kind of has nice synergy that you'd play the champion on 3, you can guaranteed play the Zealot Legionary on 4, so it kind of evens your curve out really, really nicely. And the Zealot Legionary is a kind of nice sort of free card to get. Obviously, your opponent doesn't kill it, then at the start of the turn we're getting bitter blows, and this card is insane. Like, obviously, being able to destroy the enemy with the lowest health, or that could be a Riptide in certain situations. Now, again, your opponent's going to work very hard to ensure you don't get that kind of value, but the overall value that we're getting for this 3-drop is just absolutely superb. And again, even if we get the worst case scenario, just playing Galeon for its tempo, guaranteeing a Zealot Legionary in hand is still very, very good value. So that's my number 7. In 6th place, I'm actually going back to the Necrons, and I'm going for the Technomancer. Now, the Technomancer is just one of these cards that, again, it's difficult to calculate like the kind of value that you can get from Technomancer. There are so many combos in this game that involve the Technomancer for the Necrons. It's a real key player. If you're playing a sort of Remnant or a control-based Necron deck, Technomancer is just a really key card. You know, being able to rise Lich Guards or Tomb Blades that can just keep on, you know, when they come back to life, reanimated, obviously they have flanks so they can attack. And being able to do that, you can have a Tomb Blade essentially come back to life 3-4 times, doing 9 damage, for example. It's an incredibly powerful card, and of course, if you're using it with things like Lich Guards, then that means the Technomancer is also safe because it's protected behind the Vanguards as well. So you'll see all sorts of combinations like that. And last but not least, this thing is an infantry unit, which means that it can come back out in Tomb World. So you'll see some players just play this out on tempo, and you think, why are they doing that? Obviously, it gets killed, and then a few turns later, it comes out as part of the Toon World as well. So the Technomancer is just a super tricky card. It's always a card that your opponent has to play around, whether you've got it in hand or not. So it's a super, super powerful card. So that was my number 6. So in 5th place, I'm actually going to go with Spawnedom. Absolutely love this card. It's my favourite card, I think, in the Chaos faction. Deploy a Chaos Spawn for each enemy unit. I love this card because it kind of like has this unique role in the game. It is obviously an AoE card, but it's a fancy AoE. Rather than just deal X amount of damage, it's like whenever you're playing against Chaos, you're always worried about going wide because you know that this card exists. And there's a lot of clever things you can do, like playing the Spawn and then playing the Dark Oratory, for example, giving all of them a Chaos Pact. You can obviously combine it with the Plague Marine, which means that as the Chaos Spawns come on and trade with your opponent, as the Spawns die, the Plague Marines get extra Dark Pacts. So there's a lot of synergies, that's just to name a few, that this does. But what it ultimately does is it allows you to control the board as a Chaos player, prevent your opponent from going wide. Of course, the only downside to Chaos Spawn is that it doesn't have naturally range damage. As I say, you can get around that by putting Dark Pacts on them. But, if you were going up against like a really wide flying drone board, for example, then Chaos Spawn's not going to be too helpful. But in almost every other situation, it really is. And it's a superbly powerful and very, very cheap spell for what it can achieve. Obviously, if you combine this thing with the Venom Crawler, then you're even getting this discounted to 2 as well. So Spawnedom is a super, super powerful card. Now in 4th place, my only Sisters of Battle card on this list, sadly, as it stands, is Amalia, and I absolutely love Amalia. She is definitely my favourite legendary in the Adapter Sororitas, and it's just because, again, her floor is very solid. Notice these stats again: 3 energy, 4 health, one more point of health than the energy cost, and the even 3/3 attack. You can't trick the trade. But again, it's sometimes correct to just play Amalia out on 3, even if you haven't prayed at all, because it's just a nice statted tempo card. But the ceiling for Amalia's power is just insane, right? I mean, I think the best I've had with Amalia is something like 13, like deal 13 damage, which, for 3 energy is superb. It's essentially a hard removal on a stick, and there aren't many cards in the game that are hard removal on a stick. We have hard removal stratagems, but hard removal with these stats is really powerful because we're not just clearing the opponent board, but we're actually developing our board at the same time, and that's a very powerful mechanic. So Amalia is super powerful, and with that power ceiling, is a real contender for one of the best 3-drops in the game. Obviously, her Achilles heel, if you like, is the fact that she does rely on you generating faith. So there will be situations where you haven't generated enough faith to get the value that you need, and that is really her main drawback. But overall, a superb legendary. And if you're thinking about what legendaries to craft with Sisters of Battle, then Amalia should be very, very high on the list. All right, next up, into 3rd place. Now, I'm worried this next one's going to get nerfed. I think it's so good, and that is the recently buffed Hardened Biology. Hardened Biology in the Tyranids. This has become a card where, like, honestly, you can have games where if you're the Tyranid player, you play this and your opponent player just concedes, and vice versa. You're playing against the Nids, and you see your opponent drop a Synapse creature, especially if it's like the 0 cost Synapse. Drop that between a couple of units, and then play Hardened Biology, and you just think, how on earth am I going to remove the board? The value that and the swing state that this can create on the board by giving 3 units, 2 armor, And again, it says give +2 health. It's not heal 2. It's so that means that the health can go above the starting amount. This is a terrifying board state early on to try and overcome. Quite frankly, there isn't really anything in the game I don't think that can overcome it, especially early on in the game. So it's one of these. If you can sort of get this played sort of around energy 5 turn, somewhere around there, it pretty much just allows you to kind of own the board and run away with it. So if you're in a kind of like back and forth tempo war, this is a card that can kind of just decide who's going to win that battle. So it's very, very powerful. Probably a little bit too powerful, to be honest. In second place, I'm also going to be sticking with the Tyranids, and this card is again one that's only recently been buffed, but I really do think that the Gargoyle. This was the one where I was really not sure on my list where to put it, but I am actually going to put it a second, because if you look at the rest of the things on my list, there are drawbacks to it. Like Amalia, super powerful, but what happens if you haven't got any faith, right? With Do, super powerful, dynamic offensive, but what happens if you don't draw the battle suits, right? So a lot of these do have a downside. The thing with the Gargoyle is it's completely like in your court. The ball is in your court. And the main reason why it's so high on my list is that not only is having obviously a flanking unit powerful, but a flanking unit in Tyranids is super powerful, because Tyranids already have lots and lots of advantages and pros when it comes to building board states. What they lacked was flanking, so now they have it. So it really is evening out the faction. And I think the biggest thing for the Gargoyle is just the flexibility that it gives you, right? Being able to play this as a 3-drop, or on 6 energy, being able to play as 2 separate 3-drops, or 1 giant unit that can kind of flank for 6 damage, or again on turn 9 the same thing. Do we play 3 drops, a 6-drop and a 3-drop, or a big giant 9-drop, which is terrifying, like on 9 energy? Not to mention that it combines with other like the Overwhelming Swarm, or the legendary card that makes swarming units cheaper. So we can get this for, instead of 3, 6 and 9, we could be getting this for like 2, 4 and 6, which is utterly terrifying for the power that it gives you. So a superb control tool. Should probably be in every single Tyranid deck now. I can't think of a deck where you just wouldn't run this. It's really, really good. The flexibility that it offers you is phenomenal, and I think the Gargoyle's just such a solid card that the Tyranids really needed. So yeah, for me, this is my number 2 3-drop in the game right now. So last but not least, what is going to take the top spot? Well, as I say, I thought long and hard, and there are a lot of good 3-drops in this game. But for me, probably come as no surprise to you guys if you've been watching my channel since I started, and the amount of Orkz that I've played. Obviously, Proper Killy used to be a contender. It did get nerfed, so it's not quite as good as it used to be. Still a good card, not quite in my top 10. But one that is absolutely in top 10, and in fact is my number 1 pick, is the Orc Goth Clan Warbiker. What can I say about this card? This card may have won me more games than I can care to remember, like as in ended the game. It's such a good finisher. It has an ability that is supremely unique. I think there is only one other card in the game that has the ability, called Fast. Just for those who don't know, if you essentially play this on a board where you didn't have any other troops, then it gains Fast, and that basically has the same effect as Flank, except it can attack the enemy warlord. That is super powerful, because first of all, for only 3 energy, we don't care at all about the health, because this is all about the damage it deals. So for only 3 energy, it's giving us the ability to do 4 damage from hand. That's pretty good. Then you think about things like Gargoyle, where if you really needed it, the extra reach, you could use his hero power. You could make that, turn that into 5 melee. Then you've got Makari, which you can drop down after you've dropped the Warbiker for only 1 energy, giving it another buff to melee. That could put it up to 5 as well, or put it up to 6 if you were using Gargoyle, for example. Then there's things like you could have drawn the Warbiker off of Tides of... What's the 3-drop drawing card, which gives +1 to melee attacks, so that would immediately make this a 5 energy flanker. Again, with Makari that would be 6, with Gazkul that would be 7. You've even got the 4-drop that can buff units, melee and range. So the Warbiker can end up being an 8 damage unit. More commonly than not, I kind of consistently get this out at doing 5 to 6 damage. So it's a very, very powerful way of finishing the game for only 3 energy. Obviously, you can have 2 of them as well because it's an epic card. And so, you know, you could end up drawing both of these into your hand, especially if you're running a wall like Gruck, where you can draw lots of cards. And then the other part of this card, and this is why, again, I think it is my number 1 card, is that plays into like an aggro or a finisher strategy, but also it's such a good control tool because at the end of the day, you can just bring it on for, again, only 3 energy. And everything I've just said about the damage it can deal, it can do to remove an opponent's unit. So if we just need 4, which is pretty powerful early on, but if we need more with the buffs I've just said, we can use it that way as well. So fantastic cheap removal unit, fantastic cheap finisher. It's just an all-round great card and my number 1 pick in the top 3. So that's my top 10 3-drops in Warpforge. I will be doing my top 10 for the other energy costs. Let me know which ones you'd like to hear from next. And again, what's your top 10? Are any that you agree with in my list or disagree with? Let me know in the comments. Like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.